rough and tumble world of motocross racing. Once a year, the most celebrated riders in the sport migrate to the Southern California town of Carlsbad to test their skills and stamina on an unforgiving patch of rock, mud, and slippery sand. The Carlsbad Raceway, for 13 years the home of the most significant motocross competition in this country. An annual favorite on ABC's Wide World of Sports, the United States Grand Prix Motocross Motorcycle Championship. These are the moments just preceding the start of the most significant dirt bike motorcycle race in the United States. The fastest motocross racers in the world leaving this small chute one by one in qualifying order to seek their places along the starting grid. Each of them looking for the first in the series of tiny competitive edges which can lead to victory in the United States Grand Prix Motocross Motorcycle Championship. Hello, I'm Jim Lampley. If you've been with us for any of the 12 preceding annual appearances of this event on ABC's Wide World of Sports, then you may already know that it is the only event of its kind in the United States, the only American stop on a 12-nation circuit which leads to the World Championship in Grand Prix motocross racing.
A change in the track this year, Jim, is that the starting gate, which you see there at the top of the screen, has been moved back away from the first turn by roughly 60 feet. The intent was to let the pack string out a little bit more before they bunch up for the first turn. It should make for a safer start, but of course there's no way to be sure.
And now as you see the riders lined up along that grid, they will burst from there through the starting chute, make a left-hand hairpin turn onto the course, and begin the series of circuits around this course, which comprise the first of the two motos in this Grand Prix. Now the gate goes down, and there they go. And already you can see how dry the course is as widening plumes of dust billow into the air behind each bike. Now around this hairpin and out onto the course. One bike down, two bikes down, 3, 4, 5 bikes down, and one of them, Sam Posey, was that belonging to the defending champion, American Brock Glover. His was the first bike to go down, but now there's a leader out there.
And Jim, surprisingly, it's a European, it's Eric Gabors, and even more surprising, you realize he broke his leg only 17 days ago. He's riding, not yet fully recovered.
It is indeed Gabors, number 5 of Holland, who has taken the lead. Behind him, number 3 is David Thorpe of Great Britain, who is one of the strong contenders to win this year's World Championship. Number 16, Ron Lachine, has now moved into 3rd place, and he is right up toward the front. As they make the circuit the first time, Lachine now 2nd place behind Gabors. Thorpe is in 3rd place. The number 2 rider in 4th place, George Jobet.
29 turns, Jim, on this track. It's roughly a mile long. They don't average more than about 30 miles an hour, but they do hit 60 in the fastest parts of the track. Well, Gabors just managing to hold off Lachine. Lachine only 18 years old. Jim, very inexperienced. Right there, Lachine, who is from nearby El Cajon, has just surged into the lead. Ronnie Lachine.
Wasting no time, but you wonder how much of a price a rider is going to pay to go very hard in these early laps. The moto lasts more than 40 minutes. The temperature is over 100 degrees, and Ronnie Lachine is flying already. You see him up off the seat as he moves it up the Carlsbad freeway and now down the long downhill.
Yeah, it drops 30 stories, Jim, in just over 300 yards. I should have said 10 stories of depth and 300 yards of track distance, so it's extremely steep. Lachine, interestingly, is having only his 2nd ride ever in one of these big 500cc bikes. And the thought is that even though he may be able to lead and display this kind of flashy speed, when we get to the last 10 minutes or so of the moto, this man may be exhausted. We'll have to see.
You look at Lachine now as he dominates this first lap around the Carlsbad Raceway. Each lap a little more than a mile long. It takes them just under 2 minutes to complete one lap, and now Lachine goes down Devil's Drop near the start-finish line underneath the overpass and has completed one lap with already a healthy lead over the rest of the field.
The track, as you can see, is dry, a kind of adobe dryness. You not only does the bike slide a lot, as you see Lachine fight that slide there, but also, of course, the heat reflects back off the surface of the track into the face of the rider. It's hot out there.
Behind Lachine now, 2nd place belongs to Thorpe of Great Britain. 3rd place belongs to Eric Gabors of Holland, as the European riders have moved up to assert themselves early, though Ronnie Lachine is currently running away with the lead. Thorpe of Great Britain in 2nd place. George Jobet is now moved into 3rd place. Gabors is in 4th place. Number 11, David Bailey of the
bike number 3, Honda number 3. He is the leader right now in the World Championship, and this race is all important to him. Oh, there's a spill. Jim, someone is down. It's a Lachine.
That is Lachine who has gone down.
Now Thorpe has taken the lead. Joubert right behind him. Lachine struggling to get that bike. He's called Lachine the Machine back into action. There was that kind of mistake that you might expect from a rookie.
And as you watch the new leader, David Thorpe, disappearing over a hill, a look back at the fall, Sam.
Well, of course, Jim, it does illustrate how dry the track is and very slippery, but Lachine has been having trouble since the moto began. He's made several minor mistakes. His feet have come off the foot pegs on a couple occasions, and he completely took a wrong line in one of the turns, so this is not too surprising.
And there you saw number 3, David Thorpe, going by into the lead, which he holds right now. It's a now retired bike of 18-year-old Ronnie Lachine. Lachine, who had been leading the first of the 2 motos which make up the United States Grand Prix motocross, now nurses elbow and shoulder injuries after the sudden fall, which has left the race in a 2-man battle between England's David Thorpe and George Joubert of Belgium. Meanwhile, a look at the course on which this race takes place. You already saw the 100-meter burst from the starting line, then to the 180-degree turn, followed by 2 hairpins that get the riders onto the course. 3 more turns before a dip called Rattlesnake Gulch, where spectators line up on a footbridge to watch from overhead. And then, the most critical section of the course, Sam Posey.
Well, it's called the downhill, Jim, and it is exceedingly steep. A 10-story descent in less than 300 yards of travel. It's a place where the top riders can show their nerve and quite often make passes right at the bottom.
And from the downhill, a series of gentle turns take the rider back to what amounts to the front straight, over the Devil's Drop, under the main footbridge, and we return to the action, where once again the leader is David Thorpe of Great Britain, behind him George Joubert of Belgium. We're accustomed to asking in a motorsport, Sam, what is top speed? I would assume it's fair to say that top speed is really of very little relevance here, that acceleration is what matters.
You're absolutely right. Acceleration, and look at that!
There goes George Joubert, and Thorpe wouldn't let him by. Just for a moment, Joubert appeared to have pulled the front wheel past Thorpe into first place. Thorpe would not quite let him get by.
This illustrates an interesting thing about the technique of these 2 riders, Jim. Thorpe comes into the turn slowly and comes off like a rocket ship. Joubert is coming in very hard, braking very, very late, and then he's slow off the turn. He was able to take the lead simply because he came in fast, but meantime, Thorpe was already positioned to give it throttle. He took the lead right back again.
You've already seen how omnipresent the experience of injury can be in this sport. David Thorpe, no exception. He broke his leg in 3 separate places 5 years ago. Well, we're about midway through, or just a little past midway through, the first moto. And for the last 9 laps, this has been a pitched battle at the front between David Thorpe of Great Britain and George Joubert, who may finally have gone by him now. Thorpe goes back to the inside, and Joubert shades him with the rear wheel and has taken the lead. Marvelous piece of riding there by George Joubert, who went outside to get by him and then came back inside to hold him off. And so now it is Joubert who has taken over the lead. Joubert, one of the handful of great riders from the nation of Belgium, and Thorpe, who moves into second place. And still behind them, the 2 Americans, David Bailey and Brock Glover, are, if not biding their time, certainly riding well enough to stay close to the front. Bailey there is a very strong 3rd place at this moment. Carlsbad Raceway now beyond the midway point of the first moto in the United States Grand Prix motocross, and suddenly the story here is no longer David Thorpe of England, who's begun to drop back, nor at this moment is the primary focus on the leader, George Joubert of Belgium, because the man in second place in the middle of your screen, number 11, is American rider David Bailey, who flirted with success here a year ago and is taking the lead.
Bailey's ride is magnificent at this point, and I've got to believe, Jim, that his fitness is starting to be a factor. The Europeans have come over this year with a little more time to prepare for this event than they've had in the past, but still the heat of the day is starting to take its toll.
This event approaches the level of a holy grail for David Bailey, who led in both motos a year ago, but suffered mishaps in both motos, which kept him from having a chance to win this championship. Now he's back in front with the crowd behind him.
You know, Jim, to be an American in the lead, the U.S. Grand Prix is quite something, and you really feel that crowd urging you on. We are seeing the crowd now come alive in a way that they were not when David Thorpe was leading the race and battling with Jobet.
We remind you, this is the second year in a row in which Bailey has led in the first moto. A year ago, he was in this position with the crowd similarly urging him on, hit a bump on the backside of the course, and broke a spoke on his rear wheel. He later said that that was as much his mistake as a mechanical error because he had lost concentration, gotten into a point on the course where he hadn't intended to be. Then later he led the second moto a year ago, and on a similar loss of concentration, spilled from atop his bike. So this is a time for some soul searching for David Bailey. He knows that he has been able to get into this position before. What he hasn't been able to do before is to capitalize on it in the way that he hopes to do right now.
Jim, watch Bailey's technique. He shifts his weight forward for steering control, backward for traction, and he controls the throttle so as to fly the bike, literally, across the worst terrain.
Right now, the crowd is whooping it up because of the man in the red and white leathers right there, number 14, Brock Glover. Last year's champion who fell on the first lap of this moto has gotten back into contention, and right there has moved past Jobet into second place. We'll be back. Lap now of moto number 1, and David Bailey appears destined to begin making up for the mistakes of a year ago.
Well, you know, thanks to his father, Gary, David is probably one of the best taught riders in history. And it makes you wonder, Jim, how much of racing really can be taught and how much is instinctive. And I asked Mario Andretti about that because of his son, and he said, you know, the one thing I can't teach is psychological control.
You see there how far it is from David Bailey back to Brock Glover right there on the right-hand side of those two bikes. The man going by now out of the left side of your screen. He is a good 12 or 13 seconds behind Bailey. So Bailey has no problem winning the moto if he can simply stay upright.
As we see these men riding at the end of these long, demanding motos, it makes me realize, of course, once again, the emphasis in this sport is on endurance, and it's surprising how little body fat these top motocrossers have. On the average, 10% body fat or less.
Certainly less than 10%, Sam, on David Bailey, who is in superb condition and has focused most of his year on this particular race. You see him coming over Devil's Drop now, under the footbridge, past the checkered flag, and Bailey has won moto number 1. Just to recap, a year ago, he led in the first moto and broke a spoke on his rear wheel. He led in the second moto and spilled over the front of the handlebars, effectively giving up his chance at victory. That event was won by the man who's now finishing second in this moto, number 14, Brock Glover from El Cajon, California. Third place in this moto has just gone to George Jobet of Belgium. And now, as we look back at the moment earlier in the moto, when Bailey effectively decided matters by going by Jobet and into first place, remember the overall championship is